Good morning, good afternoon. Thank you for joining today's webinar, Build a Streamlined Project Plan for Upgrade Success. Let's get started. This safe harbor notice is just to remind you that this presentation may contain forward-looking statements that are based on our current beliefs at this time and to not make any purchase decisions based off of those forward-looking statements. This webinar is part of the Live on ServiceNow series, which is a bunch of webinars and meetups and office hours all around helping you speed deployment, adoption, and achieve value faster from your ServiceNow solutions. Check out the list of upcoming events by scanning the QR code. There's also a link right there in the chat. A couple of housekeeping items. As you can see, the chat is open for you to use throughout the session. I appreciate you guys letting us know where you all are joining in from. We have quite the audience today from all over the country, as well as I think we've got a couple of folks also joining from outside the country. We've got someone from India with us. We've got some other folks in New York. I'm also based in New York, and it's super cold here today. But it's great to have you all with us, so thank you. There also at the bottom of your screen next to the chat is a Q&A button. Please use this to ask your questions along the way. We're here to help, and the group is a good size that we'll be able to get through a lot of questions today, so please do use that Q&A button. And today's session will be recorded and shared on the ServiceNow community. So if you missed any links, if there's anything you want to go back to, we will share a link today where you can see that recording and all of the resource links. And then after today's session, you will be prompted to fill out a short survey. Once you exit the webinar, it'll pop up in your browser. We really do appreciate your feedback on that. So if you have a chance, please do fill it out. Let us know if you have any suggestions for upcoming events or topics that you'd like to discuss. And I haven't even introduced myself yet, or our guest speakers today. My name is Shamail Aldasari. I support upgrades and adoption here at ServiceNow, and I'm lucky to be joined by Jeff and Thomas today. If you both would like to introduce yourselves.
Sure, I'd be glad to. I'm Jeff Allen. As the slide shows you, I'm with our customer partner leading practices team, so I'm focused on providing guidance to customers and partners. And prior to that, I've spent about 9 years leading engagements with customers as a part of ServiceNow, and before ServiceNow, spent several years as a customer, which of course where I became exposed to ServiceNow and then joined the team from there. So.
All right, good evening from Zurich. My name is Thomas. I'm a Principal Product Success Manager for our Now platform. I've been in the ServiceNow ecosystem for about 9 years, been on the partner side and customer side. 4 years ago, I joined ServiceNow directly. And yeah, I've seen a couple of upgrades and I'm always looking forward to it. Every upgrade means I have new and improved features to use in the future.
Thank you, Jeff. Thank you, Thomas. If you've ever asked yourself, what's the best way to do something? What's the best way to upgrade? If you're like me, you'll go to Jeff, you'll go to Thomas. So we're very lucky to have them both with us today to walk through the upgrade project plan. So we've got quite the agenda. I'll quickly cover the ServiceNow upgrade policy. Jeff will deep dive into the upgrade process and provide some best practices. There's a really great demo that he'll show us today. We also have some resources that we'll cover at the end. And as I mentioned before, we have saved time for Q&A and to keep your questions coming throughout the presentation. So if you've seen me before or you've been on an upgrade webinar, upgrade event recently, you've probably seen this slide before. But let's quickly go over the ServiceNow upgrade policy. So ServiceNow customers need to be on one of the 2 most current releases to be on a supported version. Here, support means access to world-class technical help 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. This help also includes support with patches and hotfixes. It does mean that customers like yourselves will need to upgrade at least once a year to stay current. Today, the 2 most current releases are Tokyo, which is referred to here on the chart as N, and San Diego, which is referred to here as N-1. So looking at this chart below, are customers with N-1 entitlement on Rome or earlier, or customers with N-2 entitlement on Quebec or earlier were due for an upgrade to Tokyo in September of this year. And for our customers with N-2 entitlement on the Rome release or N-1 entitlement on San Diego, you are due for an upgrade in March of next year. So if you're unsure about your support entitlement, you can find this information right on the Now Support portal or by reaching out to your SE. So at ServiceNow, we encourage our customers to upgrade with every release so that they can access the latest innovations and security enhancements. Not only that, but you'll also be able to access new products, applications, and features that come with the new release. Customers get the best out of ServiceNow when they upgrade to the latest release, because they will also be able to use a supported version of the platform. So this means in addition to 24/7, 365 support, you'll also get support with specific upgrade patches and hot fixes at no additional cost. So based off of what you just heard about in the ServiceNow upgrade policy, what release family are you on? You should see a poll pop up on your screen there. I'm hoping we've got some of you who are on Tokyo, our release that just came out in September. It's okay if you're not. Maybe that's why you're here today, to get prepared to upgrade to Tokyo, or maybe you're getting ready for Utah. Just give you a couple more seconds here.
Yeah, even one back on Paris.
Oh, we've got someone on Paris. Okay. Awesome.
Got some work to do. You're missing out on all the fun stuff. Need to catch you up.
All right. Okay, so we've got some people here already on the Tokyo release.
You want to share the results?
Oh, thank you. Yep, so we've got a couple people here on the Tokyo release. That's very exciting. Congratulations. Most of you are on the San Diego release, which likely means that you're due for an upgrade in March. So this content that we have prepared for you today will be super valuable. And then we've got some folks who are also on Rome. And as Jeff mentioned, we've got someone here who's also on Paris. All of you, I'm assuming, are getting ready for your next upgrade. And so now I will pass the mic on to Jeff to lead us through the rest of this presentation.
Yes, why don't you go ahead and put up the next poll question, and I will pull up my screen.
Okay, we've got the second poll question up. Got some folks filling it out now. So how many ServiceNow production deployments have you performed in the past year? I think we're going to get a mixed bag on this one. Thanks for your participation here. All right, I think everyone.
Yeah, a lot of them in the low range.
Yeah, that's interesting. Wow, we've got some people who have deployed more than 20 in just this last year. Wow.
So that's good to see. And that's relevant to the discussion today. As you will find out, the title of the session was a little bit of a head fake. So let's also then, well, let's share those results. There we go. So as y'all can see, you should be able to see the results of that. 70% in the low range, 0 to 4. So what that tells me is the majority of the folks on the call are not doing a lot of releases to prod. A few pretty heavy, but a lot not. So we're it'll be, again, hopefully this will be helpful for you to get you comfortable both with upgrade, but as well your own regular production, application updates that you're doing as well. All right, let's go ahead and do the next poll question. So if you may see the slide behind, I guess. So when you think about upgrades, at least 3, you could think of a few more, I'm sure. but there are areas that you think of that are really kind of the challenging, what feels, gives you, it kind of wakes you up at night, right? Makes it hard to sleep. And some folks kind of land one place or the other. So if y'all could kind of check in as which ones of these areas you feel like is the biggest challenge for you. Okay, a lot of good responses. And I would say pretty quick responses. So it feels like those are kind of a visceral response. Why don't we go ahead and share the results? So majority of folks said the testing was the big one, the most challenging, I guess I should say. And that's not surprising. I kind of feel that way myself. So let's kind of move forward. Let's go ahead. I guess we can kind of end the polls. We'll go ahead and jump in. So as we begin to talk about this, as I said, that kind of for me, the title of our webinar here was about the streamlined project plan, which is true, and that's not misrepresenting it. But what I also want you to think about as we go forward, and the reason I asked about your production deployments, is I want you to begin to think about this in terms of process. So, close this out of my way, because that's what we really want to get you to thinking about. So we know that in terms of living in Realville, right? We know that upgrades are work. I'd be lying to you if I kind of tried to convince you otherwise, right? Because that's just not the case. So what do you do then, right? So you have to think about how do you handle it. So you can manage them well, and it's a matter of taking care of the some of the essentials to be able to do that. So I would give you, I guess, my own personal sort of perspective on this. As I mentioned at the top, I was a customer of ServiceNow before joining ServiceNow. And so I've been in your position of, leading a team, managing enterprise software systems. I was leading a team inside of an IT operations organization. So I managed several systems in that space, including the help desk system. And prior to ServiceNow, it took months, literally. I mean, some were over a year to assess, to plan, and to implement an upgrade. I mean, it was super painful and was usually not that clean, like there were defects that still occurred and problems that still occurred as a result. So as a platform manager, when we moved toward ServiceNow and deploying that in our environment, I immediately fell in love with the ease of the ServiceNow platform administration and especially the upgrading capabilities because of how much pain and suffering we've been going through. So after we deployed ServiceNow, we began to do the upgrades as they came along, the patches and major releases. We were able to perform a number of those relatively painlessly. And we were able to do so partly because of the benefits you get with the platform, but partly because we attended to some of those areas that were necessary in order to facilitate, that ongoing process. So that's why I want you to think about this work in terms of a group of activities that constitute a process that is repeatable. So let's go ahead and dig in and break that down a little bit. So kind of looking at those different kind of challenges, just look at the overall process. So there's a lot on this slide, but I want you to, we'll kind of look at the overall and then we'll look at the different segments here a little bit real briefly. So on the overall, any given process, this is not true of only this, but of process in general. There are kind of three general elements to it, right? One, you have to define the process, right? You have to identify what it is that the process consists of, all the different aspects of it. You have to organize and align your resources to be able to perform the process. And of course, you have to execute the process and have that working in operation. So this slide just kind of puts that in kind of a quick one-page view. So step one there really is covering the first two kind of parts of that, the define and the organize elements that are the foundation for success of the process. So that's where you're going to really strategize what the approach is that you're going to take, and the different elements that you need to get around it to make it work. Key resource there, we've got the link there at the bottom of that column, is the strategy guide template. You'll find that in Now Create, and we'll take a look at that in a few minutes. That guides you through some of the key decisions that you need to make for your environment. Things such as how many instances do you have? How are you going to manage those? What kind of development activities you've got going on? What's crucial to the business? The overall flow of the process. So what your organization needs to do to enable the process. Steps 2 through 6 then begin to break down the actual process execution. So step 2 is needed for any given release because you've got specific details in that release, right? You've got new features and enhancements that you need to be aware of. You need to account for those from a functionality standpoint and to know how to handle those from a testing standpoint. Key resources there are the planning checklist. You've got some, we'll kind of link out to that as we go along. And, the workshop presentation and also some of the upgrade center capabilities, which also is kind of linked at the bottom of, column 3 there. And one side note, today's presentation and conversation is really focused on the process perspective. So we aren't really doing a deep dive into some of the tool technology capabilities, but Thomas Bukowski, who's on our call, who you met, is also here to support some of the questions around our tools and technology to kind of give you that perspective if those questions come up. And we have included a link in to a webinar which does a deep dive in that later on in one of the resource links. So just to kind of so you know that. Step 3. So that's where you start to make it real, right? You're starting the actual upgrade. You're going to do that in an instance, and you're going to do that according to the strategy that you set in step 1. Key resource, again, mentioned is the upgrade center. We'll hit on that. You'll hear us mention that several times. That's a great in-platform capability that you're going to really come to rely on as you operate your upgrade process. Step 4. Now, this is where the heavy lifting really happens. That's where you review and assess the items that were skipped during the upgrade. And we'll talk a little bit more about what upgrade skips are, and you'll decide how they're going to be handled. This is the most technical aspect of the upgrade process because you might be doing some configuration changes to account for an upgrade skipped item. You might be reverting something back to out of the box. So we'll talk about that in a little bit. Again, key resource would be the upgrade center still, and also good standard practices for doing development work. So if you're going to do some configuration changes, you want to follow your best practices. And again, we'll touch on that a little bit further. Step 5, that's the big bogey. It's required. If you don't do it, you're kind of putting yourself at risk. And it can impact your ongoing success with being efficient and effective. If you have to do it manually, which some of you may, if you haven't been already a customer for a while and have already done upgrades, if this is early and you haven't been doing those yet, you may have to do some of the testing manually. But what you want to do is to move toward leveraging automation as quickly as you can and to the fullest extent that you can, because that's really your key to long-term success. I highlighted there in bold that that's really a very important, critical success factor. And of course, key resource there is some of the testing guidance and use of the automated testing framework and auto test generation. And we'll talk about that a little bit more as we go along too. And then step 6, so it's kind of finishing it out. So 2 through 5, you've started an upgrade, you've assessed it, you've done your fixes, you've packaged up what it is that you're going to be deploying across your landscape. And then so you want to advance that across ultimately to prod. And so what you're following there are your good standard practices. I'm sure you've got, change policies and practices in place. You want to make sure you adhere to those and do it per normal. And that's, again, kind of wanted to make the reference to your regular production deployments, because really, if you really kind of boil it down to its simplest level, this is another production deployment, if you will, although it does have upgrading as an element to it. But I want you to frame your thinking in that way. So it becomes normal operation, normal work that you do as an organization. So let's look at some of the resources that you do have at your disposal. So this is just a screenshot from our doc site. And so as you can see here, it's talking about upgrades, and this is a great resource. We'll look at this live in a minute, but just to kind of give you a shot. Several different, related resource page areas. We'll take a look at the planning checklist in a minute. So these are great items that you want to refer to. Now Create. Not sure how many of you are familiar with Now Create. It is a free resource available to all customers and partners, and we use it extensively. That's where we really put all of the content assets related to our implementation methodology, because the Now Create environment, or that site, is dedicated to implementation of various products on the platform as a whole, and certainly upgrades. So what you see on the screen here is a screenshot for a success pack here that we've called up for the platform upgrade. And if you click into this, then you'll be presented with a larger screen of a lot of content. This may seem a little overwhelming, so I'll kind of try to bring your temperature back down a little bit. What you'll see when we look at it live, these are interactive links on each one of these that represent task items that you might do as a part of a project. And so I want to call you back to what I mentioned a second ago. This is our Now Create methodology for a project. And for any given project, you might have all of these different kinds of things to deal with. So if you're doing your first upgrade, then a lot of these might come into play as you begin to get your arms around it. As you begin to frame this more into an operational process, then a lot of these won't be necessary on a recurring basis. Some of these would be useful perhaps, but a lot won't. But there's a lot of useful content out here. There's something like 19 different assets that are specific or really around doing the upgrade work itself. So we'll look at a couple of those in a minute. So these next couple of slides here, a couple more screenshots, borrowed from some of those assets. So this one is from the strategy guide, and it presents to you some of the decision options that you have at your disposal for how you're going to approach, what's your strategy going to be for doing your upgrades. So I pulled this one up because it is an important first one, and it gives you an idea of some of the things you need to decide as you begin to formulate how you're going to do it. So in the upper left here, you've got what's called traditional. So this would be kind of your a simpler environment where you might just have a standard 3-instance environment. You might have a smaller or a very self-contained development team, platform team, and you might be able to even suspend some of your development work while you're doing an upgrade. So it's a little bit simpler on that end of the spectrum. Option 2, that one starts to get a little bit more involved. You got more sub-prods maybe that are in play. You've got some development work that needs to take place, but you figure out how to manage that. Option 3 there is one where you really have a unique situation where dev and prod need to stay in sync a little bit more. That's a little bit of a unique situation. Option 4 there is the one that I usually encounter the most with customers. That's where you typically have more sub-prod environments as a part of your overall landscape, and you've got ongoing work that's taking place. And you typically got a situation there where you either got a larger development team, or it might even be a decentralized development team. And so work has to proceed, right? You can't just totally stop on, pursuing the organizational goals. So that one would be more complex. So once you kind of make your decisions about kind of where you are in that spectrum, I guess, then you kind of come up with an approach. This that's kind of represented here graphically. This is the one that kind of follows that option 4 scenario. And as you can see here, we've got several different sub-prod environments. Instances. So what you've got shown here, obviously in some sort of a timeline view, you might start with, a sandpit or sandbox type environment to do an initial upgrade. You'll see what the upgrade skips are. You review and assess those, how you're going to handle those. You may even begin to, figure out, and actually configure what changes are going to be done as a result. But you end up doing that. So then you get that up to the new version. You then move that on over to your dev and test environments, right? And get that. So you begin to vet those. Then you want to be able to do your standardized testing that we're going to talk a little bit more about in a second, and ultimately get that to the new release. Then in the meantime, you get ready to go to prod, which you see finally you get the prod is on the new version. And then you might have these 2 sub-prods down here that they may have stayed on the prior version all along the way because you had critical business objectives to hit. So you kept working on those. And then at a certain time after you get prod updated, then you might clone back again or do an upgrade back to get that all caught up. So then you're back all in sync again. So again, that's based on one scenario. So the upgrade strategy guide really helps you kind of walk through and come up with what scenario is going to be most appropriate for you. So a couple more slides with some screenshots here. Both these slides have some screenshots from Upgrade Center. This one really is kind of in the preview phase where you're really you're going to do an upgrade. You want to get a heads up on what's in that upgrade, what's coming my way. And so you've got some data here that helps you assess what those are. So that's part of the beginning of the planning process, step 2. And then as you move to step 3 in that process, right, then we've got some other tools that are in Upgrade Center. Up here, we've got where you've actually, scheduled the upgrade. And then down here, this image, you've really got information as you begin to run the upgrade. You see some of the results of that and monitor the progress of the upgrade as you go along. So you can, proceed through the process. And that would be one of the earlier steps as you move through the process. So let's talk about skip changes. So let's level set. What are skip changes? In short, kind of the layman's definition is they consist of items that are not upgraded because they're not out of the box. There's been some change made that results in those items not being out of the box. So our system recognizes that and accounts for that, keeps track of what those are and says, okay, I'm not going to mess your stuff up. I'm going to, but I keep track of what they are. And as you see on the slide here, there could be new things you put in. It could be modifications to out of the box records. It even could be deletes. So the system keeps track of that. Again, from a personal note, I love this about the platform because it doesn't just wipe you out to scratch. It had you start all over again when you want to do an upgrade. Because I had that problem in some other environments, other enterprise software systems. No fun to do that. So it keeps track of that. So it keeps track of what those changes are so you don't, wipe them out. And it also, by virtue of keeping track of what items are skipped, gives you some tools in here as well. And Thomas can speak to some of this in a minute, that help you then make some dispositions about how you're going to take action on those. So what are the actions? So when you review those, you will sometimes take an action to remediate that item. You might revert something back out of the box. There are going to be some things that you need to make a configuration change for and keep some things in play. Well, in those situations, then you're going to be configuring some work, right? So you need to capture that work in an update set following standard practices. So you keep track of those so that when it's all done, you can bundle that up and you can move it to the next instance and get it ready to move on forward. So let me stop there for a sec. Thomas, I'll let you speak a little bit to some of the capabilities and the process around managing that well.
I think you highlighted this mostly. So it's important for us, again, as Jeff mentioned, all your modifications that are important for you are there. The good thing is seeing all the skip changes. It allows me also to streamline the whole process. And I like features like, for example, if I modified the script, I can see my old version, I can see the new version, and also just merge some of those lines. So it's a really good tool. It's always great also, and Jeff will go into more detail a bit in a moment, to also reevaluate, does my change still have to be there going forward? It's always a good opportunity to see, can I go back closer to out of the box? To maybe replace a feature that I customize that is suddenly out of the box there, so I don't need it anymore. And B, also to make my upgrades a bit easier going forward.
Yeah, absolutely. You'll hear me echo the exact same sentiment because you'll hear us repeat it often. Always stay out of the box or as close to out of the box as possible. The more customizations you make, the more effort is involved in the upgrade process. And then the longer that will take as well. And the harder it is to stay caught up in, so you can take advantage of more and more of the new features as they come your way.
And one point to add, and it's also covered in the checklist on the docs, which Jeff mentioned previously. So one important piece is to make it a bit easier for you is always open up an update set first where you capture all those changes. And the checklist is great because it even reminds you where in the step do I need to create it. Then I capture all my different activities, how I want to proceed. And I can use this update set going forward to make it easier and don't have to repeat the whole process for every instance. So again, this checklist is one of those great resources to use, and it reminds you of all the steps in between as well.
Yes, and if I may follow your comment there, just because we haven't really talked about it specifically. So the folks who aren't yet on Tokyo, something you can look forward to. And if you're in Tokyo, you can certainly look, read up on it, make sure you're taking advantage of it. So not only do we have Upgrade Center with its tools that it's been available in Tokyo, we also have upgrade plans, and which really give you even better capabilities to make the upgrade process easier. Thomas, you want to add some color commentary on that?
Oh yeah, it basically takes away that step with the update set. So it really helps us to capture all those different changes, and it helps us the promoting process. So I can have my builder instance where I adjust all the different changes I want to do during an upgrade, and I don't have to apply this update set all the time again. The upgrade plans will help me to even automate and streamline that process. So I really like the new features with Tokyo where we're helping our customers to upgrade even faster and simpler.
Yeah, yeah. So establish a process and use the tools that are at your disposal, and that will help you manage the skips a lot more easily. Let's talk a little bit about testing. So again, testing's the necessary evil that we have to deal with. But the better that you prepare for it, then the easier it will be. I mean, that's true. And it takes diligence and discipline to stay after it and to really make an improvement on it. So let's spend a minute on this, because I know that y'all indicated that this was one of the big challenges. So there are a couple of basic principles here that we've got kind of enumerated. You want to have, again, process. You hear us using that word quite a bit. So the more that you have a standardized approach, then you've organized your resources and your team around it, then the more effective you're going to be at it, right? And it'll help reduce the amount of testing time that you have that's required. From a tooling standpoint, we've got the standard kind of test management capabilities, which facilitates at least manual testing, but then the automated test framework, as you heard me mention earlier, that's really what you want to take advantage of, is as early as you can in your maturity process and to the fullest extent possible here, because some of the leading practices here to kind of further that thought process. Ideally, as you're doing your configuration work on all of your applications, you want to be building a compendium of test plans that go along with those changes that you're making to facilitate your business needs, your business process needs. So you'll use that as you define and execute tests for those particular needs. You'll use those in a test plan. When you go to automated test framework, you want to leverage those to do automated testing so that you can reduce, some of those difficulties, make the regression testing easier. I'll give you a personal, reflection on that too. As a customer, we had a QA team. Then this was before the days when we actually had test management and ATF built into the platform. But we had a QA team, and we had another outside automated testing tool. So we had begun the process actually to do this, to create test scenarios and test scripts, test plans in that tool set, so that we could do the regression testing as we were doing our changes and configuration to the various processes. We were starting with incident, problem, and change. So as we made any modifications to that, we baked that into the automated test plans. That's what we now have in platform. So it's even more tightly coupled to facilitate that. So when you're doing an upgrade, man, it's just, quick to do regression testing to make sure you're not breaking something in your existing process. It made a huge difference in our ability to, get the upgrades to become, more painless. I would say here, emphasized again in bold on the bottom, that these really are where you're going to get a big bang for the buck, a lot of big benefit to doing this. So I know it's an investment in time. Nobody really likes to spend a lot of time testing. I mean, I get that. I don't either. But the investment more than pays off. So definitely encourage you to take it seriously and to spend the time that it takes to use those. And Thomas, you could probably share a comment or two on how much easier it is now with ATF and the auto test generation.
Well, yeah, I just wanted to mention, so for every customer who already is in Tokyo, congratulations. One of those new features or new capabilities we added is the automated test generation feature. So we use AI to fingerprint your data, generate test cases for you, and it helps you the whole process. And it's perfect for regression testing. So hopefully with San Diego previously, it's one of those last times so we have to do all the testing all by yourself. the support with AI will make your upgrades even more faster and simpler. And it's so great to see the differences and see what has changed after an upgrade to then decide, do we need to act, or is it maybe a change that is intended like a new feature?
Yep. Excellent. Great comments. So again, establish process, and work on improving the maturity around the testing and utilize these tools, and that'll help you manage the testing challenge for sure. So let's take a minute. We'll hop over to a couple of sites so you can just kind of see what it looks like in real life. So I am on the docs.servicenow.com site, so our main product documentation site. And as you can see, this is the same place where I was when I took that screenshot. Prepare your upgrade. And you can see this is a part of a lot. This one happens to be, under the Tokyo release notes area. So there's a lot of information about Tokyo specific. And then these are the tools, for example, the upgrade planning checklist. You can link over here. And so you've got a number of items that are kind of sequenced out, as Thomas mentioned, a couple of them that help you make sure you're not missing something important, and maybe the order in which some of these ought to be pursued. There's a similar version of this. It's also available in Now Create, and we'll look over Now Create in a second. So these are great resources to help you plan and prepare for your releases. And as I mentioned, kind of in the step 2, when you're working on a specific release, you're going to be referencing over here anyway too, because you got release notes information that you're going to look at. So let's look at Now Create. So this is like the home page of Now Create, and it's the URL here is the nowlearning.servicenow.com/Now Create is the home page here. And so it has, as I said, information about our methodology. And we're going to look for some information under the success packs, which are bundles of documents, resources. So we're going to look for things related to, if I could type.
I think you meant to say upgrade.
I did, didn't I? Thank you. So here we are with the core platform upgrade success pack. So we are going to open the success pack. And as I showed you on the screen, Scott, so it presents you with this kind of timeline-oriented view, which is standard for our methodology, which covers, beginning traditional end-to-end project management. And so you've got under any given stage of the project, there are various tasks that you might perform. So all of these bars are interactive. They'll refer to then, they'll take you to some further information about those tasks. So I'm going to look specifically here down under the core platform upgrade under the strategy workshop task. And there are actually, 3 tasks in that little box. I'm going to click on this first one here, prepare and conduct upgrade workshop. And so each one of these tasks then presents you with this screen or a kind of card with 5 tabs on it, and it has the same structure. So the first one talks about, why this task is, important. Why is it here? And of course, couples that with, well, why should you do it? Don't skip it. The who then talks about stakeholders that are involved in kind of a racy form. The how tab then gives you a narrative description of the nature of this task and how to perform it. And then here's the meat. On the inputs tab, it's where we have links to certain assets. Typically, they're templates that are here available for you as you prepare to do a project. In this case, we're talking about an upgrade. So I'm going to click into this one that we've talked about, the strategy guide. So we're going to view that asset. So again, it pops up a view here, gives you an ability to have a preview. Most of these can give you a preview of that document. So you can, look at the content of it, whatever, take a look at that. And certainly you can download that document. And as I said, this is a template. So what you would want to do is to download this and use that as you work through your strategy setting for your approach for how you're going to do upgrades. And you'd use the content in here to drive that. And there are other ones here. So here, like I said, there was another version of that planning checklist. It's also here. So great resources here to help you prepare for the execution of your upgrade. Like I said, there's something like 19 different assets that are tied into the upgrade process. So let's talk about community. So community is a great resource. This is a place, of course, where you can, and this one you can see here, this particular area is about releases and upgrades. And so great place to get information about upgrades in general, articles here that people post, questions that people post. You can go in and post a question, get some help from someone. Someone else asks a question, you can contribute, help answer their question. So we love to see that interactivity and collaboration in the community. It's also a place where you can see some links to the webinars. And one of the links we got on another slide, the webinar is stored out in community as well. So a tremendous resource to make sure you take advantage of if you haven't already. And then lastly, take a quick look at this item. This is in our ServiceNow.com site. This is actually in our Customer Success Center. This one is an ebook that's available through the Success Center. Obviously talking about upgrades, efficient and effective. So, and it's has a lot of the similar content than what we've already been talking about. But obviously it's presented in more of an ebook for readability, and that's maybe it easier to pass around if you wanted to share with someone as you're trying to advance this and get ready to do your upgrades in a more mature manner. This is a good aid to help kind of get your mind around what all is involved in those. So a good resource. All right, so let's kind of wrap this up then. Key takeaways and resources then. So pretty clearly what we've talked about a lot, we've hammered pretty hard the process. So you really need this strategy about the process. And as I said, it's not that much unlike what you would do for a normal production deployment. There's a little more involved, probably a little more impact for your organization perhaps, because you're affecting maybe the whole, a full family release upgrade perhaps. But you need a strategy around that to make sure you can execute and organize and align. Obviously, you have to get your people and your time available to be able to perform that, make sure everybody's on the same page, and then leverage. We've already shared a little bit about some of the tools. Look at some of those other webinars and look at deeper dive on some of those other tools that are available, because they will really make your life a lot easier as you do that. So this kind of summarizes a few of those other resources. This one is the upgrade kit. You see it's referred to here, and there's a new upgrade kit that comes with every release. So that's a good consolidation of resources there when you look at that. This again goes back to community. From the community page, we talked about that. And this one is a laundry list of several, which we've wanted to try to give you a basket full of links here for some resources. The one that I mentioned is that webinar, but it's a deeper dive on some of the tools that Thomas has been talking about. That's this link right here. But all of these you want to go explore and read up on so you can take advantage of what's described in there.
Thank you for that. I always am learning so much in all of these webinars from our experts like Thomas and Jeff. So thank you both so much for being with us today. And thank you all for joining today.